Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why should I care if everything ends? These questions haunted one of the greatest literary minds of all time, Leo Tolstoy. Tolstoy had it all. War and Peace and Anna Karenina made him a literary giant. He had wealth, status, a loving family, and a large estate. Yet, despite all this, something within him shattered when he reached 50. A deep existential dread took over, one that robbed him of sleep and the will to live. This wasn't a momentary depression, it was a relentless crisis that left him paralyzed with fear. For a man who once lived indulging in every pleasure, he suddenly found himself asking, what's the point of any of this? Why strive? Why create? Why love? If everything is destined to end in nothingness? He began to feel like he was playing a role in a play that had no audience, no script, and no final act. As he delved deeper into his thoughts, he started questioning the very nature of existence. His mind became a battlefield between logic and despair. He sought refuge in his work, but found no solace there. He tried to immerse himself in the happiness of his family, but even their love couldn't silence the voice in his head demanding answers. Night after night, he lay awake, unable to escape the overwhelming realization that his achievements, his legacy, even his own identity would one day be erased by time. This internal war left him physically and emotionally drained. He isolated himself, avoiding conversations that reminded him of the hollowness he felt inside. His success became a heavy burden rather than a source of pride. He envied those who seemed content with life's simple pleasures, peasants, workers, people who neither questioned their existence nor sought profound truths. And yet, he could not turn his mind away from the abyss that threatened to consume him. For nearly 50 years, Tolstoy lived as a skeptic. He had abandoned the religious faith of his childhood, finding it outdated and irrational. He poured himself into success, convinced that reason and progress could sustain him. But at 50, this illusion crumbled. He became obsessed with the question of existence. Life seemed like a cruel joke where death would erase everything he had built. Why struggle if everything ends in nothing? He saw no difference between living another day or ending it all. Sleep became his only escape from his spiraling thoughts. In his essay, A Confession, Tolstoy wrote that he had to trick himself into not taking his own life. Even in his novels, his turmoil bled onto the pages. The character Levin in Anna Karenina mirrors his crisis, asking the same relentless question: what is the meaning of life if death is inevitable? But instead of giving up, Tolstoy embarked on a journey, a desperate search for meaning. His suffering was not simply intellectual, it was visceral. His body ached, his mind was restless, and even the most trivial of tasks became unbearable. Every day felt heavier than the last. He saw the world in a shade of gray, where the laughter of children sounded distant and the beauty of nature seemed to mock his pain. He considered drastic measures, even contemplating withdrawing entirely from society. And yet, something kept him from crossing that final line. One of the turning points in his search was a simple yet haunting parable. A man is chased by a wild beast and falls into a well. He clings to a branch to avoid the dragon waiting at the bottom, only to see two mice gnawing away at his lifeline. Just as his grip weakens, he notices drops of honey on the branch. He tastes them, momentarily distracted from his doom. Tolstoy realized that this was his life. The beast was the terror of existence, the dragon was death, and the honey was the fleeting pleasures that distracted him. But the parable left him with one question. Was there something beyond the well? Could there be something greater that he had overlooked? This story lingered in his thoughts. He saw the well as a metaphor for life itself, an existence suspended between fear and oblivion, with moments of sweetness that often deceive people into forgetting their fate. He became fixated on the idea that there had to be more than just survival and distraction. He had to find the answer before the mice chewed through his final thread. Tolstoy saw that people dealt with the absurdity of life in four ways. Ignoring the question. Many live without thinking about meaning. They work, love, and die without questioning existence. But for Tolstoy, ignoring the truth wasn't an option. Pursuing pleasure. Others indulge in wealth, relationships, or entertainment, but Tolstoy saw this as the drops of honey, temporary distractions from the inevitability of death, despair, and suicide. Some, realizing the futility of life, decide to end it. Tolstoy himself nearly took this path, but stepped away at the last moment, living in existential limbo. Many recognize life's meaninglessness, but do nothing about it. They're trapped, unable to embrace life or let go of it. Tolstoy found all these responses unsatisfying. There had to be another way. He spent months analyzing these different reactions. He interviewed scholars, read every philosophical text he could find, and observed people in different walks of life. But nothing truly satisfied him. He could not be content with distraction, nor could he ignore the weight of his awareness. He needed a real answer, something that could withstand the relentless tide of death and suffering. He turned to philosophy. Socrates, Buddha, Schopenhauer, great minds who wrestled with the same question. Yet none gave him an answer that truly satisfied him. No matter how deep he dug, he found their solutions incomplete. Their words resonated with him, but did not provide the peace he sought. Science, too, left him cold. Darwinism reduced human life to mere biological processes. We are born, we reproduce, and we die. Nothing more. This only deepened his despair. Science could explain the how of existence, but never the why. Tolstoy was at an impasse. Reason had failed him. Science had failed him. And yet, he saw people who did not despair, people who lived with peace. What did they know that he didn't? His frustration with reason and science was not due to their lack of knowledge, but their lack of hope. They provided explanations, but no solutions. He needed more than logic. He needed meaning. The more he searched, the more he realized that those who were truly happy did not rely on philosophy alone. They relied on something deeper, something intangible. Tolstoy began observing the peasants around him. Unlike the intellectuals in his circle, these people were poor, suffered immensely, and yet lived with an unshakable sense of peace. They had something he lacked: faith. He saw that faith was not a blind acceptance of doctrine, but a way of living, one that acknowledged suffering and still found peace. He realized that meaning wasn't found through reason alone. It required a leap into something beyond logic. It required faith. His realization marked the beginning of his transformation. He saw faith not as an illusion, but as a tool, perhaps even the only tool, capable of lifting humanity beyond despair. It was not about avoiding suffering, but about understanding it within a greater framework. And in this, he found what he had been searching for: a way to live